Sometimes I say to a poem. Sometimes I say to a poem, not now, can't you see I'm bathing? But the poem usually doesn't care and quips, too bad, Hafiz, no getting lazy. You promised God you would help out. And he just came up with this new tune. Sometimes I say to a poem, I don't have the strength to wring out another drop of the sun. And the poem will often respond by climbing onto a barroom table, then lifts its skirt, winks, causing the whole sky to fall. Welcome to installment 2 of the Poetry Oracle podcast. Again, the following reflections are only what the poem currently means to me today as I read it into my life. A great poem means so many different things to each person, and I would love to read your reflections on the podcast blog. Enjoy. Perhaps I should have started this podcast site with this poem, because for my money, the Sufis are the best at playing with words ever. So many themes using metaphors are in the Sufi poems from these spiritual Muslim renegades. First, that you yourself are God, or perhaps a better word, the divine, and that whatever this word for God or divine means is painfully too limiting for this force that created everything in the world. There is no word or words possible for the divine, and yet the Sufis and the great poets try anyway to use words to explain what is not explainable with words. Second, that our egos, and often literal interpretations by the world's religions as well, tell us we are somehow separate from the divine, which for the Sufi poets is just not possible. If we are the divine, a unique manifestation that has never been, a miracle itself, that there has never been nor ever will be another like us with the billions and billions of people that have existed or exist now in the world or to come, that is truly miraculous. Furthermore, that we are also immersed in divinity. It is literally all God. Everything in the world is divinity, light and dark both, yin yang. This is essential in their message. This can also get you killed, saying such things. Capital letters in the Sufi poems mean a reference to the divine, although playfully, as if the rest of the words are not also, at the same time, divine. And Hafiz especially loves to actually put himself in the poem beautifully. Some would say that is his ego, or a desire for fame, but I don't think so. I think it is so playful, fun, and human, and unique in the poetry world. Several recurring threads in many of the Sufi poems speak of a certain drunkenness in a tavern, a certain intoxication of feeling the oneness with the divine when the ego shrinks away and the idea of separateness is quashed. Also, a theme of sensuality, where our bodies, our sexuality, is a beautiful metaphor as well for feeling of the divinity within us that comes also with sexual ecstasy. And finally, again the immersion, often written using the metaphor of water, that we are immersed in divinity as a fish in the sea of the divine, swimming in and breathing in the ocean, for example. And saying these metaphors, too, will get you stoned in the town square by those religious powers so sure that they know what the divine is when they really cannot know from their egos, and thus sentence you as blasphemous. Finally, what I appreciate perhaps most is that the Sufis make me smile, even laugh out loud with tears in my eyes, at the humorous playfulness that reminds me on these days when I do not feel very divine, that I am nonetheless just that. And in these moments of laughter, tears, anger, and joy, that all these feelings are divine. And at the same time, the feelings of not feeling divine, of a separateness, also human, and also are, paradoxically, divine. And so this poem visits me when I don't really feel like designing and posting the podcast, not really feeling very divine. My strong ego telling me that I am somehow separated and alone in this world, even though I know somewhere deep inside me this is not true. Yet it feels so true, and I have this certain growl inside me, an anger, a distinct sadness at something about the unfairness of the world and my experiences in it, as if the world has ever been fair. So a part of me does not want to be bothered with this poem or podcast, but I'm too busy bathing in my own angst, and the water feels warm, uncomfortably comfortable, and with a certain cynicism that maybe Hafiz is really wrong, that it is not all divine, that our political, environmental, social, and spiritual worlds are all collapsing into some inevitable demise, and therefore, what for anything? That I do not have the strength or real belief to, quote, wring out another drop of the sun, and perhaps there are no more drops. Hafiz challenges me that this is really some kind of spiritual laziness, and that it made God a promise to help out. And the beauty of this poem from the 12th century is that I don't feel shamed by Hafiz, that I failed, that I am somehow a sinner. I actually smile because it feels like he is sitting here next to me softly saying, it's okay to feel that too, for that is also divine. But in the end, somewhere, perhaps when you took your first breath in your body, you made a promise to your own divinity, to remind yourself and the world that it is all divine, and to somehow, even in your ego angst, as strong as it feels to be as if the only real truth is in this moment right now, to say yes to divinity and the world as it is, as you were feeling it, in this moment right now. And then playfully, ribaldly, I swear I can almost see Hafiz in a kilt jump up on this world barroom table, lift his kilt, a sparkle and a wink in his eye, showing all the world his most private of privates, perhaps even turning around and spanking his own white arse in a Monty Python-esque way, and heartily laugh. Laugh that my ego, and for that matter, his ego, the collective egos of all humans, can begin to explain the ineffable, where it's going, or where it came from, or really what any of all of this means. I am an amateur aficionado of the mineral springs, seeking out these waters wherever I can find them, to soak and bathe in the essence of water literally bubbling up from out of the deepest part of the earth where it is boiled, and then kindly sent up to soothe and support this body of mine, which is getting nothing but older. The image I have posted in this podcast is one of my favorite natural springs, where it sits on the side of a mountain overlooking an expanse that the eye actually runs out of its vision in the vastness. And sometimes, for fleeting moments in that spring, I want of nothing. I just am. And this is a different bath completely, immersed in the divine water, mountain, sky, vastness of I am, that I think Hafiz is alluding to. And playfully lifting his kilt for the world to see, twinkling, smiling, and saying yes. Yes to me, yes to him, yes to the world, yes to all that is and always has been and cannot quite be described or explained by anyone, Hafiz included. What else is there to do but raise one's own skirt and show our deepest and most private parts of ourselves to the world in our humanness, our divinity, and find somewhere in that a twinkling, ribald smile at the beautiful, painful, silly craziness of what cannot be explained by any human being. And so I hope in this podcast that I have, in some small way, stepped out of my own spiritual laziness and met my promise I made to God, which is also to myself, to give one infinitesimal attempt in this moment in time of my own unique divine wink and smile, white arse and all, to say you and I are divinity, always have been and always will be. And if that gets me stoned on top of a barroom table or stoned in the town square, so be it. Blessings to you and your unique divinity. Have a great week. Deep bow, Mythic Tim.